All right, here we go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast today. Very excited to have my guest, J.C Hall. J.C, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and an absolute privilege to be here.
Appreciate that. So J.C is a hip hop artist and therapist who runs a hip hop therapy studio program at Mott Haven Community High School, quote unquote, second chance school in the South Bronx. In 2013, J.C assembled a professional recording studio in one of the school's old storage rooms to provide youth the opportunity to engage in the therapeutic process through writing, recording, producing, and performing their own music. The origins of the program are chronicled in the award-winning short documentary titled Mott Haven, which showcases the efficacy of this program in addressing trauma and grief in the wake of a school's tragedy. After the passing of his friend and mentor, Dr. Edgar Tyson, the originator of hip hop therapy, J.C created hiphoptherapy.com to serve as a centralized resource for those interested in learning about his theory and application. Due to the impact of his work over the years, J.C won a National Jefferson Award for Outstanding Public Service, benefiting the New York community in 2020. I just learned that among those recipients have been Oprah, President Jimmy Carter, Shaquille O'Neal. Jesus, not too bad, man. Congratulations. Welcome to the podcast.
Did you say Jesus or Jesus not too bad?
Jesus not too bad.
Throw Jesus in there. No, thank you, man. That was a beautiful introduction, and that was an honor. That award. I'm still not really sure how that happened, but it's an honor.
So before we go in here, share with our listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
All right, so I grew up in Long Island in Nassau County, and currently I live in Manhattan.
Nice. I was born in Manhattan, and I used to live in Long Island.
Oh, nice.
So,
where?
Very cool. Long Island was Shoreham, and then West Hempstead.
Okay,
so
yeah.
Kind of around. But look, this is going to sound crazy to you, but this is why I do this podcast. You just have this, I don't even know you, but I can tell from, the research I've been doing, you just emanate this genuineness and authenticity about the work you do. How did this start for you?
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
That's a great question. I'm not really sure. I think maybe it's because I come to this first maybe as an artist, and I didn't necessarily get into clinical work from an academic interest. That was probably a big piece as well, it more being a personal interest. And I think I feel like I kind of had a leg up on some clinicians, having been failed time and time again by the mental health system continuously throughout the majority of my life, and then eventually it helping save my life by ending up with a therapist who I've been with for decades now. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe that's a piece of it, where it's given me a leg up in the sense that I kind of know a lot of what we're taught in schools, and a lot of it is just, it's so much more of the work is intuitive than written in these textbooks. And so much of it personally has failed me that I see it reproduced. And even though, I never would wish that on anyone, I think, the whole wounded healer concept, I think it kind of gives you a bit of an edge when it comes to connecting with people and trying to work with them in a very genuine, authentic way.
You've been open about your own experiences with mental health struggles and challenges. What was that like for you growing up? When did you realize, shit, something's going on?
I would say, man, I would say probably, so when I was 13, I broke my femur in half. I fell out of a tree. I was a wild little kid. So I was kind of always a bit of an adrenaline junkie from day one. And then, so I was in a body cast for 2 months over the summer, super itchy. I don't know if anyone's seen one of those things, but yeah, you got the hangers and all that, trying to itch everything. Just brutal, in the summertime, you're a kid, you like to play. I was big into soccer. And even after I healed, it was never the same again. But I remember getting put on IV morphine at the time, and the painkillers that I was prescribed afterwards, and taking it as, recommended. I wasn't necessarily abusing it. But that, I think, was really that had a huge impact on me, even though I don't think I would have admitted it or even realized it at the time. Because, being in recovery now, I would, looking back, the first time I tried drugs and alcohol, I think I had a very different experience than maybe your average person. A lot of people, they talk about how the first time they get drunk is it was a wild night. They kind of took a break. They're like, whoa, that was too much. For me, it was like more immediately. It was just like I fell in love with it. It was like, this is what I've been looking for every waking moment of my life. This like hole within me, this hole in my soul felt complete for that split instance. You know what I mean? And I felt that with the drugs. And then I started to explore myself and got heavy into addiction by age 15. I was doing cocaine every day. I mean, I was drinking every day. I had no intent of seeing 16. I was going to just crash and burn, getting involved in a lot of stuff and a lot of illegal stuff. And
let me just interrupt you, sir. You talked this hole in your soul.
Yes.
Describe this hole in your soul.
Feeling less than, feeling absolutely terminally unique is a common phrase, right? Like feeling I am so broken that no one else, no matter what you've been through or your experience, you could never possibly fathom or understand. I'm completely helpless, hopeless. So it went hand in hand with the major depression, right? And so a lot of self-medicating, but that sense of complete helplessness, hopelessness, even though my family would never admit it, I know I'm just a burden to them. I know if I was gone, that their lives would be easier. They wouldn't have to deal with me. They wouldn't have to pick me up, drag me around, put me in institutions. They wouldn't have to deal with all this if I just were gone. That whole of feeling like nothing's ever enough. I'm never going to be enough. And the drugs really helping fill that hole, really filling that void, at least temporarily. Up until as you start getting deeper and deeper into active addiction, they start working less and less. They feel it a little less and less. And that's how, I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe everybody to some extent feels some sort of disconnect from society. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Excuse me here. That's, what you're describing is, come on, that's very intense, and it leads you down. You led down this path. So what happens? Do you go to school? Do you not go to school, or what?
So I was in school and I was actually doing really well at I was one of the lucky ones in that I didn't have to work too hard to get good grades. So I could kind of like still be drunk every day and and pass. And maybe I'd get C's instead of straight A's, but I was still managing. But the one thing that really kept me from the edge was when I really started getting into hip hop. I always really loved hip hop music and resonated with it. But 15, when I was at my lowest point, is when I first decided to take a crack at emceeing and actually writing, And the one thing that now in retrospect, I can piece together. But at the time it was like cool and dope to like rap about what you were going through and your struggles and talk about, like, I really resonated heavily with Eminem and Tupac, especially talking about, addiction. Pac's talking about that with his mom and Dear Mama. And so really rapping about struggling with addiction and mental health. And it was a way for me to kind of structure and organize all of that madness that was swirling around in my head, those thoughts of no one else could get me, and put it in a way where it was more strengths based, right? It wasn't like pathologically oriented. It was, I'm just telling my story, rapping it to my peers, and then to get feedback from my peers like, damn, that's an ill bar, man. Like, that was really cool how you phrased that like that. And that was, I like that. And I can relate with that. I feel that way towards my circumstance, or I have that kind of relationship with my parents, or whatever it may be. So now in that moment, I'm no longer feeling so damn alone. And like, there's no point in me being here. It's like others around me, especially as a teen, my peers especially, right? them, that resonating with them gave me a sense of like purpose and hope in a time when I didn't have any at all.
How old were you at that point?
15.
15. So still super young. Had you at that point like seen a therapist, or had you been involved in
Yeah.
programs, or what?
Yeah, so at 15, I went to my parents used to corner me and always like go to, therapy because my younger brother was really struggling with depression as well. It's pretty heavy in my family. And he had seen a psychiatrist, and it had been helpful for him at that point in time. And my parents were always cornering me and trying to get me to go. And I was always no, no, no. One day they kind of caught me at that age, 15. They caught me at a point of just utter, just so low, suicidal plans ready to go. And something in me just said, fine, I'll go. I'm not really sure what, but something in me said, I'll go. So I went, and he put me on antidepressants. And I have to say that initial interaction helped save my life. Even though I didn't have any relationship with him, just him giving me a diagnosis and just saying like, you're depressed. There's a name for this, major depression, right? Like that for me also helped change the game again, because going back to that feeling terminally unique, I'm screwed. Nobody could ever understand it. I can't understand it. How can you fix something you can't understand, that there's no term for? In my mind, there was no term for this illness that I had, this sickness going on within me. But that was about as far as therapy got me. It helped, right? In the sense of the medication made actually a world of difference within those first couple of weeks in terms of just bringing me back from the brink of suicide. I remember noticing the first time I noticed the meds were working, I used to walk through the hallways of high school and I could barely get from like door to door without thinking everybody's staring at me, everybody's judging me. I'm such a piece of garbage. Like, why am I here? Like just constant, cyclical, unable to, and I first noticed maybe 3 weeks in to being on an antidepressant. Wow, I just made it down the whole hallway and didn't have one of those thoughts.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like huge difference, which might sound normal, but to me that was huge. After that, though, and I was also still getting, using and supplementing with illicit substances. So it messed all that up. You can't really do both. It's going to interfere. And then the psychiatrist, we didn't really connect. And I think he saw things that I saw as a life vest, like hip hop and rapping and my friends and the people I was hanging out with. He saw that as a part of the pathology. He saw that as, here's this kid who's trying to be street. Here's this kid who is trying to put on this certain persona and trying to be something he's not. And that's what I need to like get out of him.
Right.
As opposed to seeing, oh, you're finding community through this music and this culture, and you're connecting with it in a very deep human way, even though I might not look like someone traditionally who would, right? Something within it is resonating deeply and giving me purpose and a reason to keep going. So that hip hop side was very much pathologized. And at that point, I have nothing to talk about with someone who, you know what I mean? So I was very shut down. I would literally go sleep on his couch. That was the essence of my relationship with the psychiatrist for the first 2 years, 15 to 17.
Right. So let's jump to when you decide I want to become a therapist. What did that look like? When did that happen? How did that happen for you?
It was a last resort. It was a plan B, man. I always wanted to rap. I always wanted to make music. And, but I was also always fascinated with the human mind and psychology. So I got my bachelor's in science in psychology, at Fordham. And afterwards, the best job I could get was delivering pizza, which I loved because I could just ride around all day and listen to music. Right. But long term, it was like, what am I doing with this degree? Like this BS degree. I got to make something of it. And I like helping people, or trying to. Like in my music, the stuff I was writing, a lot of it is about confronting my own inner demons in order to put it out there and be vulnerable and try to kick some of the shame and let others know it's okay. The same way artists I grew up on did for me. They didn't know me from a hole in the wall, but I could sit and throw on this person's record and man, they know what I'm going through. But look at them now, like they've been through all of this but they're on top of their game and everybody respects them. And, so I've always wanted to do that with my own music in a way where, I think music can grip people in a way that just talk can't, so that's always been an avenue that I wanted to pursue. But, I was like, let me try to make it as tangible as possible as well, which would be therapy. But my more traditional view of therapy was kind of more laying on a couch one-on-one. It wasn't very, it didn't, I wanted something a bit more radical. And then I learned about social work. And so I was like, let me apply this to grad school for social work. I'll apply back at Fordham, the one school and, that I just graduated from the year prior, and see how that goes.
Were you still using at this time?
No. Okay. So yeah, big jump, right? So 15 to 20, I was in and out of rehabs and psychiatric institutions. So a lot of back and forth. I'd get sober for a bit, relapse, sober, relapse. And the last time I went away was for a year, and that really did the trick. Yeah, I took a whole year off halfway through college, and was lucky enough to have the opportunity to do that. A lot of people don't have that opportunity. Forever indebted for that. So to be able to go away and for some reason that time, number 7, it clicked. I don't know why, but something clicked. I had enough. And so yeah, this month it's been 16 years, man, without a drink or drug. So 20 was the age. So went back to school, finished out college. So I was probably a couple years clean and sober at this point, and on a pretty stable dose of meds and consistently seeing my psychiatrist and in a good space. But yeah, so I found out I got into the school. I got into Fordham and the grad school, and I was like, damn, I was really hoping they would reject me. I only applied to the one school. Like I really didn't want to go back. I wanted to pursue my artistry, but that wasn't like popping off. And it's hard to work a 9 to 5 and pursue your dreams as an artist. So that seemed like a last resort. Turns out, I get in, I'm like, damn, all right. I start having this existential crisis. And I hear someone talk about a friend who's a music therapist. And I was like, wait, hold up. Like, what's music therapy? What, so I start researching it. I get a new wind in my sails. I find, some programs in the city. Oh, this is so cool. I go and I start looking up eligibility requirements, and you have to know how to sing and play 3 instruments, none of which I know how to do. Yeah. I can't read sheet music. I can't, I have no formal training, which is also one of the beautiful things about rapping and rap music. It's very democratized. Like if you can speak, you can rap. You don't need class and beat making, right? So that wasn't seen as a form of music in the traditional structures of music therapy. So again, another instance in my life where I felt like I was being told by the systems and structures at large, like, you're not good enough. You're not what we're looking for. You know what I mean? So I'm super bummed. And I in music therapy, in the Google search, I cut out music and put in hip hop on a whim. I think it's very unlikely anything's going to pop up. I was like, this is stupid, but whatever. Desperate times call for desperate measures. So enter, and all these like articles keep popping up. Like, and I'm like, oh man, peer-reviewed journal articles, hip hop therapy. Not only is it a coined phrase, this is like an evidence-based practice. And this dude, Dr. Edgar Tyson, who is this guy? It's just, I've got all these articles and I'm scouring them and like reading them. And it turns out he's a professor at that one school that I'd just been accepted to. The guy who like founded this. Yeah, man, crazy serendipity. And it was a moment in my life where it felt like all the puzzle pieces just kind of finally fell together. Like it started to make sense why I was where I was and had gone through what I'd gone through. And whether it happened that way on purpose or not, some divine order, or simply the opportunity presented itself, and I better make sure I seize that, so I hit the ground running. I entered, I sent him a novel basically saying what hip hop did for me, how it saved my life, how I've always seen it as therapeutic. Could I shadow him? Could I get whatever, anything? And he was just like the most humble man I ever met. He was just so caring and giving and was like, yeah, of course, man. Like, and like met up with me and First time I met him, he pulled up in a Yankee fitted and a silver cross chain, and I was like, oh, off rip, I knew like I'm gonna click with this guy, you know,
Right.
and he just embodied hip hop, you know, and we clicked right away, man. And so, you know, he was my professor throughout, my mentor, close friend, collaborator. We were working on a book together before he
Oh my
passed, and
God. How
yeah,
did
and
he
he just
pass?
sudden heart attack at 54.
Oh, oh God.
Yeah, it was wild, man. It was really tragic, and it was like on the heels of my brother's death, and it was like I don't know if I've been the same since, to be fully honest with you. It was a bit of a 1-2 punch,
Mm.
but I haven't like revisited any of those writings since. Maybe because of some of that stuff that's attached to it, that emotional weight. A lot of his stuff got lost. It was supposed to be like a 12 chapter textbook on hip hop therapy. I was going to contribute 4. He had about 8. So he asked me to be like a co-author with him.
Oh my gosh.
And then a lot of his stuff just never resurfaced after he passed.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just to go back a little, so he was already at the school you were in apply.
Yeah. The
That's
one
so crazy.
school in the world,
That's so
man.
crazy.
Unreal.
All right. So this is, I mean, this is amazing. So let's kind of dial in here to this program you created. How does this happen?
So it was my second year of my clinical internship. Um, I ended up at the school that I'm currently at to this day, running year 11 of the program. But so my second year, I end up at this second chance high school for kids who are overage and undercredited, either because, you know, they're at least 2 or more years behind in high school, either because of they've been locked up, foster care, dropped out, decided they just don't want to go, usually pretty extreme, extenuating circumstances. And I clicked with the kids immediately. It was very just over hip hop. Like, you know, it was at that point, you know, I was already aware of hip hop therapy, and that was my goal. Like, I want to be a hip hop therapist. That's what I want to do. And just connecting with kids over our love of the music, and relationships starting like that. And then, oh, you're also an artist? Oh, okay. Oh, wait, you know how to like engineer and make beats? Like, you could help me create some music? Yeah, I can help you with that. Let's come after school. I'll be in this office. And then the principal and administration seeing like these kids normally that they couldn't get in the doors, now they can't get them out. They're like in there till 6 p.m. with me, and we're just making music, and just
Right.
kind of like, what is he doing, you know, what?
Right.
And then, you know, asking me, hey, if I give you a bit of a budget, you think you could put together a music studio to let the kids record? And I was like, of course, I've been doing this for, you know, since I was 15, making my own music. I would love to do that. That would be ideal. So I put together a budget. It kept increasing. The kids kept getting more and more excited. So the principal was like, oh, all right, make it, you know, this amount. All right, double that. All right, you know, it kept going up. And ended up building like a professional recording studio in an old storage closet back in 2013. And yeah, man, and just immediately having results and connecting with youth who normally were not having they were not connecting with any other adults, and were usually getting in fights or causing
Right.
some sort of issue is coming about. And and that's really what has also helped sustain it, the continued kind of results. So it's kind of doubled in size and investment. Now we have this big like L-shaped room, top of the line production equipment, recording equipment, software, everything you would find in a standard studio in like one downtown Manhattan or something. Like we have that. And
No, it's crazy.
yeah.
So, what in terms of like results or the therapy part? I mean, people listening, I'm sure, music to so many of us is amazing and quote unquote therapeutic. But
Yeah.
when you think about hip hop therapy, what does that mean, hip hop therapy?
Yeah. So it's essentially incorporating the inherently cathartic components of the culture within itself with more well-established therapeutic modalities. So, like, for example, let's take CBT or DBT. if we're sitting, the way it was kind of initially first started by Dr. Tyson, if we're sitting and analyzing lyrics, say I have them bring their favorite song, and certain things come up in the lyrics, we can then have a discussion about it. How does this relate with you? We start building rapport. Then we can start getting into some quote unquote cognitive distortions, or how thoughts, feelings, and emotions and behavior are all interlinked. And then so it's kind of started as like a jumping point. But then when you view the music itself as therapeutic, especially in terms of, talking about trauma work and working with individuals who have either been victimized, have been exposed to tremendous amounts of gang violence, street violence, now you're bringing in the body, right? Now you're bringing in the rhythm and the power of that to kind of, from a neurophysiological standpoint, to regulate the nervous systems, to then be able to have these higher order, insight-oriented conversations that are traditionally seen as the goal of therapy. I guess DBT would be another that you could find overlaps in. So when I'm working with a kid, right, and so they're writing out a song, right? So they're a piece of almost like narrative therapy. In hip hop, it's an art of storytelling. You're telling your story, talking about where you've been, what you've seen, what you've been through, where you're going, right? Trying to reshape that narrative. And the therapist from behind, like my job is to help assist, you know what I mean? To help kind of guide and help really further operationalize what's already inherently cathartic within it, right? Writing down your story, you don't need a therapist to do that. You know what I mean? But working with them, maybe to challenge them a little bit, or to try to, give a bit of a directive, that can help facilitate, further growth or healing. But so then they get in the booth. When you're writing and you're rapping and you're bopping and you're performing, now movement's involved. Now rhythm is involved. Even though we're talking about language still, just words, the words themselves, like, are units of rhythm in terms of stressed and unstressed syllables. Like even when you think about, Shakespeare and iambic pentameter, right? There's movement and rhythm embedded within the words and the way it's phrased. It's the same with rap, right? So you're writing, but each unit of rhythm has verbal significance. So you're connecting that top down and bottom up. Right? Like the words in it of themselves, they're telling a story, there's cognition, but it's delivered in a way where it's body based and very grounding and centralizing. And then you're doing that in a booth, and now we can start talking about mindfulness, right? And maybe not necessarily.
So are you, excuse me for interrupting, but are you making certain components of what you're talking about? Are you making this conscious to them during these classes, or
it depends. Like, I think, sometimes it'll kind of be made a bit more explicit after the fact, but there's plenty of times where I don't think it even needs to be made. Like, I don't have to necessarily spell out the power of diaphragmatic breathing or list certain results of certain studies to experience it. I think as long as they're experiencing it. So when you're rapping, right, you really are using a lot of breath, and diaphragmatic breathing it's essential to be able to get off as many bars as you can. It's big in singing as well, right? And that being something that can help calm, the vagus nerve, help calm your stress response system. And then them experiencing that firsthand. So their first time in a booth, and I'm kind of giving them some tips on how to breathe and how to center themselves. They do that and they see the results in their vocal performance. It's in real time. They're like, oh man, I'm sounding a lot better. My throat isn't as tight. I'm not as closed off. And then, and then you continue to encourage that. Like, you see how it kind of calms you, that way of breathing. And then when we go on stage, we do showcases at the end of every year. That's when you really are putting a lot of that into practice in a much larger way, not just this microcosm. Now you're on a stage in front of a bunch of other people and utilizing those techniques to kind of your breath to calm and center yourself. So I think the connections being made, even if they can't necessarily say it back in therapy speak, you know what I mean? Like, they might not be able to, but they know if I breathe this way, I can help kind of center myself a bit, kind of calm down a little bit. And that will help me perform better, and that will help me feel better. And maybe try that next time you get aggravated in class, or next time you're arguing with your mom, or, like trying to find parallels. Similar with mindfulness, like I wouldn't necessarily give them a diatribe about that. But when I'm trying to teach effective creative writing, I'm telling them you really need to be aware of the Like, what are you saying that's unique? Everything's kind of been said and done under the sun, right? How are you describing your circumstances and the environment around you in a way that it's different, and you're not just doing something everyone else does? The way you do that is you need to be super aware and attuned to your surroundings of what's going on, how like the light is shimmering, how the sound of the pavement when you're walking on it, certain little details, and tapping in. And so really trying to help encourage and harness that skill as well and build that up. And all of those, I think, are happening when you're during creative artistic development. So it can be very much presented in a way where it's not seen so intrusive, where it's like you have a problem, you need to learn DBT skills. It's more like you have a strength and you want to keep harnessing and building that. You can use DBT skills. You know what I mean? It's kind of a slight perspective shift.
So are you viewed as, do your students think of you as a therapist or what?
That's a good question, man. I wish I could ask some of them right now. I think some
But
of them.
your title is what? Social worker?
Yeah, social worker. Yeah,
Okay.
clinical social worker. So they see me as a social worker. Some will refer to me as their therapist. Some will call me their counselor. Some will just call me the studio guy. And it's. And the one plus I think of also like saying like, yeah, this is how therapy is, or this is how it should be or could be. It helps. It's helpful in attempting to destigmatize it when they move on, right? Like when they graduate and after termination, right? There's many of them will continue to need services or could benefit from that. And a big struggle in my work is trying to say like, this is also therapy. Like I know you see this as different. There's others out there who might not do it the exact same way, but can get the same results, hopefully, or something, work towards those goals that you have. And I want you to be able to do that. But that can be a struggle. I think some of the hardest things for me are when they graduate and move on, and knowing that, there aren't, like, you can't just dial up your local hip hop therapist. You know what I mean? Like
right.
So it's, the goal is really to get them set up in a place where they've developed that therapeutic relationship with the culture itself, that they can kind of sustain it without someone else, without a therapist. That's a bit idealistic, like a lot of them, people need help. And I'm speaking as one of them, like sometimes lifelong. So that can be tough. So I think, that's the pro to kind of iterating, like I'm a therapist. But then there's also the potential con of that scaring kids off. So I don't like dwell on it, but I don't hide from it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'll introduce, I'm JC, social worker here. I'm a therapist. Let's make some music. You know what I mean? It's.
What do you, I mean, you have this incredible sense about you that just cuts right to the core. Again, this authenticity. How did you learn how to engage with people in this way?
Oof. Well, first, thank you. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's. I think a lot of it is intuitive and primarily maybe like growing up with my friends and making music with them and recording them and encouraging them and them doing the same for me. I think people held space for me. And I think that was mirrored in a way where I kind of understand how I want to be able to hold space for others, whether it was a sponsor for a 12-step program, a therapist, a house manager, if I'm in a halfway house, they're just always being one person who did it better than all the others. You know what I mean? Who really helped hold space in a way where I felt seen, and it wasn't about them. Like some people in the helping professions I had found, it was more about them hearing themselves talk. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't necessarily like, what do you as the individual need? You know what I mean? And I think really just trying to see each person as an individual, and I might have a specific approach that I want to do, and but maybe you don't like that approach, maybe you don't like hip hop, then we're not going to use that. You know what I mean? Like, it's really just trying to get to know that person. I think in the same way, I always wish someone would try to understand me and try to really hear me out and ask probing questions. You know what I mean? I think when it's modeled for you, maybe that's where maybe it's easier to do when you've seen how it should be done. And I don't think a lot of people have been lucky enough as I have, to have people in my life who have really modeled that to the extent where I'm still here. You know,
in the bio, part of the description of the school in the South Bronx, is a second chance school.
mm-hmm.
And I mean, that just brings up a lot of, I think, ideas for a lot of people, like these kids who've probably, for the most part, are coming from poor backgrounds. Probably most of them, if not all of them, have had some kind of trauma in their lives. And I think for them, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to encounter someone like yourself who listens to them and makes it about them is probably like, wow. They probably initially they probably don't even trust that. What do you care about me?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. They think I'm like a Fed trying to just like get the details of the street activity so I can call the cops. No, 100%, man. They're not used to it. I don't think any of us are really used to it. It's a very foreign thing for someone to be 100% there for you. And even the stuff I've disclosed, like in the film Mott Haven, or even just here today, like, it doesn't come up. I don't talk to them about it. It's unless it's like necessary to somehow move the work forward. It's about them. Like, I'm there for them. You know what I mean? And so as far as they're concerned, I'm just the dude who wants to get to know them. Like, they don't know if I've had similar experiences, and it doesn't really even matter. You know what I mean? It's really not about, can I relate? Can I not relate? It's like, I want to understand whether I relate or not. I just want to understand. Like, so just, to help walk me through this.
As we kind of wind down here, I'm curious about your perspective of the current state of therapy. On this podcast, we've talked a lot about different modalities and trauma modalities more specifically. But when you think of quote unquote therapy and providing therapy for yourself and how it's provided at large in our communities here, what do you think of? What is your perception of it?
A tremendous cultural disconnect. I would say that's pretty much, and I know there's been talks and pushes within the field for a long time to encourage cultural competence and viewing things outside of a Western framework. And I don't know. I don't see much of it. You know what I mean? And I think, one of the beautiful things about hip hop is the way it's cross-cultural implications, and the way it's taken root globally, because it's tapping into something innately human within all of us, no matter your geography, race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic status. There's something inherently within it that's tapping into the human spirit. And the fact that that's not like a standard, that everybody's learning about that, if you're not of it or from it or have no exposure to it, to me is baffling. You know what I mean? Like, I think hip hop therapy is very much seen as very niche, right? And it is, as of now, a very niche approach. And, but to me, it's like baffling how it hasn't, been embraced more so. I mean, that also sounds ungrateful in the sense of, even in the past decade as a field, hip hop therapy has made tremendous strides and being put on stages where it just never would have before. But it's also the resonance of hip hop culture, that every therapist doesn't have some sort of exposure to that, in order to meet people in a culturally informed way, even if they're very different, is frustrating. You know what I mean? And I don't know of anything else that cuts across culture as effectively as hip hop. There might be, other very specific manifestations that I'm just unaware of because culturally I'm not attached to it. But yeah, it can be frustrating because it's like, I feel like there's this answer and so many people can use this. You know what I mean? Like so many people, and it's just not spreading quick enough. And it's frustrating because I don't know what to do about it. And I try to speak out about it as much as I can and push it forward as much as I can. And there still feels like a lot of resistance. And it's seen, I don't know if it's seen more as a fad, or it doesn't seem to be taken as seriously as I feel it should be. Again, without trying to sound ungrateful for, the tremendous opportunities I have gotten to push the word forward and try to really, and gotten great responses and feedback. I just know how much, people can benefit from it, and how many people are reaching out to me all the time through my website. Like, can you hook me up with a hip hop therapist in this area? My son's going through this, my daughter's going through this, and I don't have people, to refer them to. The infrastructure just isn't there. And as one person, like, it's like, I don't know how to build out that infrastructure,
J.C Hall, man, you are one friggin' inspiring dude. Gotta have you
Thank you,
back.
man.
Love to have you back.
I would love that.
What's the best way for people to reach out to you, get in contact with you?
I would say check out hiphoптherapy.com. There's a form submission on there. Just, reach out. I'll try to get back to you as quick as I can. And I would just encourage you to check out the site. I made it for my mentor just to really help solidify and further his legacy, and try to just spread free information, have it be a centralized resource so people can just start diving in into the literature and start applying it immediately, to some extent.
Awesome. And we'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. J.C. Hall, man, awesome. Great meeting you. Thank you so much for being here.
You too. Thank you so much, guy. I really appreciate this opportunity, for real.
All right. We'll be in touch.